Hello, everyone, and welcome to Herosner Podcast Season 2, Episode 5, with our guests Ruth Thomasian and Arto Vaun from Project Save. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm your host, Vic Aslanian. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mike Balyan, where we discuss our great Armenian history, covering different people, eras, and topics. It is Saturday, February 5th, 2020. Happy Saturday to everyone. It's an unusual time for us.
Yes, it is.
How are you doing, buddy?
I'm fantastic.
Yeah.
As always.
It's been a busy week for us.
Spreading that positive energy.
Yeah, lots going on. We just recorded part 2 of the Ashrakuni dynasty. If you haven't listened to it, it's up on all the platforms. Download it, listen to it. It's a great one. We dove deep into Paranzem's life and King Pop's life and other monarchs. It was a long read.
Great time of turmoil.
Yeah, I know. Now, before we bring our guests on, there was some sad news yesterday that I want to mention. We lost one of Armenia's great composers yesterday, also known as the People's Artist, Arthur Grigorian. Yeah. I'm a big fan of his. He's authored a plethora of songs, social programs, ceremonies, especially Voices of Artsakh, and many more. May he rest in peace, and we are sure he's putting up an amazing show up in heaven for the angels.
Yeah, he's a good friend, very good friend of my mom's.
I know,
from childhood.
I know how devastated she is. Yeah. Thank you to him for everything he's done for our culture. Thank you, Maestro, and Hayden Asumen Astvat Hokitlu Savori. I don't like to start the show with any sad news, but it's just what the situation is.
We lost a great one.
Yeah, but I also want to mention we will be off this coming Thursday because we did 2 shows, so we need a break. We'll be back on February 17th with Carla Garabedian, who is a renowned filmmaker, director, writer, and a broadcaster. She was one of the producers of the movie The Promise. She's also working on her new film, The Trial of Solomon Tehlirian. If you guys ever read the manuscript, or the trial manuscript, I should say, it's unbelievable. It's going to be a great show. So mark your calendar. Again, that's next Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Live with Carla. So without any more delays, I'm going to bring on Arto Vaun, who's joining us through video, and we have Ruth Thomasian, who is joining us by phone. We were having some technical difficulties for her to join, but it's fine. We can make it work. We all adapt to the situation. So welcome to both of you guys. Thank you for joining us. Ruth, are you there?
Thanks,
guys. I'm here.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, how are you?
Arto, I think we can't hear you.
There we go.
Yeah,
there we go. The internet seems to be having a Saturday lazy morning.
Yeah, we can hear you. There's a weird delay in the internet, but it's okay. Something's going on with everyone's internet today.
I'm seeing that on my side too a little bit.
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh no. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah. Ruth is on joining us by phone, like I said. Thank you both for doing this. Now, we've obviously prepared some questions for you guys. We're going to talk about Project Save and everything that you guys do. But before we do that, I want to start with both of you. First, I guess Ruth can go, and then Arto. If you guys can tell a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you grew up, just a quick bio so our audience can learn about you a bit.
You want me to start?
Yes, Ruth. Yeah, go ahead.
So, I could go on for hours. I'll try and make it short.
Take over the show.
I grew up in the Boston area. My mother's German, Connecticut Yankee, I like to tell people, and my father is Armenian. And we didn't grow up very Armenian in Belmont, Massachusetts, which at the time didn't know anything about ethnicity. And my father anglicized our beautiful Armenian name several times. By the time I was born, it was spelled the way I spell it today. But 2 years later, he changed it to Thomason, S-O-N on the end. And so no one in Belmont really, except the few Armenians who lived there, knew I was Armenian. But I've always loved social history, people history, and I always wanted to know more about what it meant to be Armenian. And so I didn't find that in college, which didn't, at the time I was in college in the 60s, they knew nothing about social history. That was a new topic of conversation. And it wasn't until I think the audio tape recorder came out and people started doing oral history that then you started being able to understand people's history, social history. And so I taught school for 3 years. After 3 years, for various reasons, I said, I've been in school all my life. How am I going to teach these kids about life if I don't know what's out there in the real world? So get yourself out of here. And I lived at the time 30 miles from New York City. So I said, you are going to the big city and just figure out what you're supposed to do with your life. And so that's what I did. And I wound up working in the theater. I had skills from home of being able to sew and stitch and do clothing. And so I got some jobs in costume shops, in Broadway theater costume shops. And when the Armenian community, which I was just getting to know in New York City, heard that I was doing costumes, I mean, they thought I was a designer already. They said, well, we have a theater group. Would you design costumes for us? And of course I would. So I went to do my research, and there was absolutely no visual research for what the people looked like, what clothes they wore, what made them different from the people among whom they lived. And the play was set in the homeland. Actually, it was set in Tiflis, Georgia, and I had to put my thinking cap on. The New York Public Library had nothing about Armenians except illuminated manuscripts, and that was certainly out of my era. So it was the beginning of senior luncheons at various churches, and the St. Vartan's Cathedral had one every week. So I asked if I could go there and talk with the folks and see if maybe they might have photographs that would help me.
Yeah.
And, oh, my God, it was like, do we have photographs? Oh, come to my house. I will show you. Now, it wasn't what I was looking for from Tiflis necessarily, but here they were welcoming me, and I know what it is now that I'm a senior. When a young person shows interest in your work, you are so grateful for their interest. And so I would schlep around New York City, Long Island, on the train, on the buses, whatever, to go and talk with them about their photographs. And they would sit with me for hours and help me document photographs. So I knew that I was onto something. And in 1975, I decided I knew I was saving something a lot. I would call it Project Save. And in the theater, everything was a project. What's your next project coming up? And so mine was Project Save. And I kept working in the theater. I had to support myself. But I was paying the expenses for copying photographs and traipsing around and all that myself. But after a while, I thought, I can always be a costume designer. I was thinking of one day being a Broadway costume designer. But eventually, I had to say, you can always be a costume designer, but you can't always talk to these elders who are genocide survivors to hear their stories and document their photographs. So that's when I decided to go full-time with Project Save, and here we are. Soon to be 50 years later.
Yeah, well, what you started is an amazing
wow, from where to
thing.
where?
Yeah, and we're going to share some of these pictures later on for our audience to see. But Arto, how about you? A little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts, also in the Boston area, like Ruth. My mom and dad met here. They were both immigrants to the United States. I was born here. I grew up here and a little bit in Virginia as well. My mom worked down there for a couple of years, but mostly in Boston. And then I moved in 2007. I was doing a second graduate degree here in Boston, but then I decided to switch things up a little bit, and I moved to the UK to continue my PhD there in Scotland. So that kind of triggered this kind of journey I've been on up until 2020. I was living in Scotland. I lived in Berlin. I lived in Beirut for like 9 months or so. And then I was in Armenia for 7 years as a professor there. So yeah, and then when I came back during COVID, or the height of COVID in 2020, came back to Boston to be near my mom and just kind of make sure everything is okay here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a time of like for so many millions of people. I think COVID has forced us all to recalibrate and reevaluate our priorities and what we want to be doing and how we want to be spending our energy and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
of course.
So for me, it was kind of getting away from academia. I like teaching, but I really was burned out from the problematic world of academia. And so I got back to, I'm a musician and I'm a poet. Those are really my two driving forces in my life. And so I got back to that. I took a year to kind of decompress. And then when this opportunity arose with Project Save, and I joke around about this with Ruth all the time. I had vowed to myself, and I don't mean this in any kind of, I don't want people to take it the wrong way, but it's just the reality. I had kind of vowed to myself that I really kind of didn't want to work at an Armenian organization going forward. But Project Save, I had such respect for Project Save, having grown up here in the Boston area. I knew I knew a fair amount about Project Save. And what I did know was that how much people thought highly of it. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Project Save is this kind of quiet organization. It just does this amazing work under the radar. And it's very focused, on photography. It's got a very specific mission. And then when I went and met with Ruth and her team and my predecessor, the previous executive director, Solin, it just, I don't know, it was just kind of, as they say, good timing, and just things just really clicked, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah. Well, we have some questions set up, but I think some of them were already answered.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But
also, I'd still want to pick both Ruth and Arto's brain about certain experiences, but that'll come throughout the podcast.
Yeah. So, Mike, go ahead. I know you had a question for Ruth.
Ruth, as a social historian, what did you come across? Well, as in, what type of stories did you come across or discover that really, really kind of started to make this gain momentum, right? There had to be, we all come to some point where something sparks it to really snowball, right? At what point did you realize that? And if you could tell us about that particular story, if it's a particular story or time.
Well, I guess I knew it immediately.
Okay.
But there were some precious moments with the seniors. One elderly man, he pulled a photograph out of his jacket pocket, and I was like aghast. I said, "Oh my goodness, this is an old country photograph." And yet it looked there was something a little strange about it. And he said, this is my family. I carry it around in my pocket every day. And he pointed out to me the part of the photograph that had been taken in his hometown of Palu. And he said, my father had gone to the United States, to Providence, Rhode Island, to work to a sanitation department, of all things, running the street sweeper, being a street sweeper. And every once in a while he'd come back to Palu. And the last time he had been there, his wife had become pregnant, but when the baby was born, he wasn't there to see the baby. So they had a family photograph taken. And Serap, his name was Serap Kondasian, was a youngster standing on the right-hand side. And the baby, his mother was holding the baby, and the grandfather was in the front with his baggy shalvar pants sitting. It was just a treasure of a photograph. And then he told me how he escaped the genocide. He was the only survivor of the people in that photograph. And he, through the help of the Red Cross, they found his father still in Providence, and they connected him. And maybe 10 years after the genocide, he was on his way first to France and then to Providence. And I'm figuring at some point he found the photograph among his father's belongings. And he told me how he took the photograph to a photographer and had the photographer put a photograph of his father, and it was a more contemporary photograph of his father in the picture, and then himself as a young man in his very tailored American suit on the side opposite from where he was as a little boy. And he had literally put his family back together again, if not in real life, in a photograph. And I said to him, how did you know you could do this? I mean, here I grew up with photography all around me, and it would never have occurred to me that you could add people into a photograph like you did. And he just shrugged his shoulders. He says, I don't know. And so that's when I realized that when you need to do something, your brain will tell you, just like my brain told me to do Project Save.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a poignant story for me.
Yeah, well, in that time where when you put something in your mind and you want to create it, like you said, your brain,
You're gonna get it done.
yeah, you're gonna get it done one way. You're gonna come up with it, and that's why I always even tell my kids nothing is impossible.
Yeah.
If you envision it, you'll figure it out. There's always a way. So that's amazing. That's an amazing story. Arto, I know I want to touch a little bit about your past. As a professor, I could say. So let's talk about your position as an assistant professor and chair of the English Communications BA program at the American University of Armenia. How did you get involved, and also what type of impact did these programs at the institution have on the students? Like, what programs helped them for their future?
Well, so like I said, I was in the UK working on my PhD, which was in creative writing and literature, English literature. As people might have guessed, I have a little bit of a. It turns out I'm not very risk averse when it comes to just picking up and moving. So I moved to Scotland and I had never been there before. I've moved to where you guys are. I've lived in California and I've never really been there before. When I was
just on a whim, basically, you would get up.
Basically,
and go.
Yeah. I mean, that's
right.
its own kind of saga, but on a whim. And so while I was there, I was starting to realize that even though I do enjoy the intellectual and as an artist, just the way capitalism works these days, a lot of artists find that either you're going to go into academia to pay your bills, or you got to figure something else out. And I was like, okay, I guess it turns out I'm a pretty good teacher or whatever, and I do enjoy the intellectual kind of atmosphere at a university. So I thought, okay, but I'm not like to the point where I'm just going to go wherever there's a job. Like a lot of my friends and colleagues, where you're getting your PhD, oh, you get a job as a professor in Ohio, and well, there you go. And I was like, I'm not like that. I want to be in the Boston area or somewhere else that I find kind of that I want to be at, not just because there's the job. So I thought, well, let me just see what's going on. I'd done some teaching in Boston, but I didn't quite feel ready to come home yet. And just around that time, I saw, I don't know where I saw it. I'm assuming social media somewhere. I saw that the American University of Armenia was about to launch their undergraduate programs. AUA had been a graduate school since its founding in 1991-ish.
Okay.
And one of the BA programs I read was going to be an English department. And I thought, well, that's interesting, And then I thought, I've actually never even been to Armenia. And even though my mom is from there, To be honest, I'd really had no desire really to. I've never been one of those people. For me, I'm a very happy. Not happy is not the right word, but I'm very content in inhabiting a diasporan world. I think the diaspora is in and of itself a very important, living,
Yeah.
amazing organism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of myself more as just a kind of so anyway, I didn't feel that connection per se, but I thought, well, I'm already I'm in Europe. I'm kind of, not far away,
Down the
and it's
street.
I'm down the street, and I thought that's interesting. They're just starting this thing. I mean, it's brand new. That's unusual. So I reached out, and the very I had a very interesting conversation with the people there, and they were like, "Come on out. Let's see what happens." So it was, I mean, to be honest, in retrospect, it was not professionally, it ended up being one of the best things I ever did. But in the interim, when I look back on it, logistically, it was not, whatever. That's a whole other thing. But I just basically picked up and I showed up on a kind of virtual handshake
Yeah.
based on like
Yeah.
2 or 3 conversations. But the short of it is, I got there. I was one of maybe just a couple. I was one of the first full-time kind of foundational faculty members.
Yeah.
And then over the years, I developed a lot of the courses. I helped teach a lot of the courses for the first time. Then I founded the Center for Creative Writing, which is the first of its kind, not just in
Mm-hmm.
Armenia, but in that part of the world, where I wanted to really, I mean, obviously Armenia has a rich tradition of literature,
Mhm.
but not a rich tradition of studying creative writing, the craft of
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
creating literature. So I did that, and then by the time I left, we had gone from just 3 to 5 faculty members to, I don't know, over 20 faculty members. One of the most selective and difficult programs to get into in Armenia.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Our graduates, our students are incredibly. I mean, when I talk about it now, I still get kind of goosebumps. But some of the hardest working, creative, forward-thinking, amazing, amazing students who, with obviously Armenia is a challenging place, but we would do our best to give these students a kind of safe space
Yeah.
to let their creativity and their progressive thinking and their own individual sense of who they are blossom, but in a very rigorous. I mean, they would work really, really hard. I mean, we weren't screwing around. So my goal was always to make sure that, if we're calling ourselves an American university and we're licensed by the American accreditation system, then the standards were very,
It's
very high.
serious.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we weren't we
Yeah.
weren't kidding around. So I'm very proud of the kind of the imprint. Whatever, in
Yeah.
whatever small way, whatever. But I'm very proud of that. It was
Yeah.
a long
I,
road.
I feel like Arto's situation is one of those where, you run into somebody that you haven't seen for a long time or something. Like, yeah, hey, yeah, let's catch up. Give me, and then they show up. And you're like, whoa. And he showed up in Armenia. It's like, I'm here,
Yeah, right.
But yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, from the sound of it, it looks like you had quite an influence and impact on,
Yeah.
setting quite a standard on
I hope so.
potentially. Yeah.
I hope
Now, are
so.
those students able to transfer here because it's
Yes.
credited as, the American standards?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had students who've gone on to graduate school or other types of academic endeavors in Europe, in the United States, and Canada, all over the world. And of
That's
course, we have
amazing.
many
Yeah.
who've stayed, who've stayed or come back to Armenia and contributed in wonderful, wonderful ways, in all different fields. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, can students from here go to the
Yes.
university? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
the other thing that was wonderful is over my time there. And by the way, I just want to be clear here that I was also very blessed that there was a very tight, uh, maybe small, but a tight circle of other professors at AUA some of whom were from Armenia, some of whom were, like me, international faculty. We had a little window of time there where there were really incredible people across the university, it was almost like kind of a. Sometimes I joke around and I say it was almost like the golden era of post World War II American, capitalism, where somehow
Yeah.
everything was great for a little while. So in other words, there were a lot of people there who, from the staff, the faculty, just wonderful, wonderful people. That yeah, it's a job, but clearly everyone was really working together to try to their best to elevate the institution and consistently raise the standards and be there for the students, be there for each other, and also be there for the community in terms of different outreach programs.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
and so, one of those things was we would get students. We were starting to get more and more students outside of Armenia, who are seeing AUA as just a good university in that part of the world. It is an American degree, and that there's a lot to be said for that, for certainly.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Ruth, I'm wondering during this journey of, your collection, this vast, unbelievable collection that you've gone, picked up over what, 3-4 decades, right? What
Yep.
what roads did it lead to in terms of traveling? And are there any particular stories that stick out in your mind?
Well, yeah, the travel part is important because I didn't want Project Save to just represent East Coast American Armenian. I wanted to cover the whole 9 yards of people who lived throughout the world who had photographs to share. And especially because Armenians I learned from various villages, went and settled where a friend was already settled. So Worcester, Massachusetts has lots of heartbread seeds. Providence, Rhode Island has polyp seeds. In Fresno, they're from different places. Once there was one person from a village, they all, when they were able to emigrate, they landed where their friends were. That was just sort of logical. And I also knew I wanted to go to other countries and introduce the idea of all the history that we can find in photographs if we talk with each other about them. And the one thing that I really remember and treasure is that, so Project Save really is an outgrowth of my work in the theater and the importance of theater. And it never dawned on me that, let's see, it was only about 7 or 8 years after I started Project Save that a playwright called me, a guy named Richard Kalinowski from University of Wisconsin. And he said, I have written a play about an Armenian family. I am not Armenian, but my wife is Armenian, and my daughter's Armenian, and I thought that something needed to be put on stage about the genocide. He said, and I am looking for a photograph to be the main prop in the play of an Armenian family, what they would have looked like in the homeland before the genocide, and there needs to be a young man who would, at the time, because my play is set, he said, is set in 1915, or in the 20s, actually in the 20s, and late 20s, early 30s. But in 1915, the young boy would need to have been about 15 years old. And so, by that time, I hadn't collected all that many photographs, but I said, well, let me take a look. And I did find the photograph, and it became the prop in the play. And Richard's play has been in countries all over the world, translated into various languages. And when it appeared in London, I was invited to go there and do a photograph exhibit of Project Save images. And I did that with many of the performances. It happened in Boston also when it was at here in Boston, I did a lobby exhibit with our photo blow-up, and it really gave people who would be coming to the play without much knowledge of who Armenians are and what it means to be Armenian, and a little something about the genocide. It gave them an orientation that really worked beautifully.
Wow. So I mean, it almost served as like an educational program for a lot of people on the East Coast, perhaps.
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Ruth, I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, when you started collecting this, obviously, 1975, we didn't have the internet. What kind of a network did you create in order to be able, like, over these years, to be able to collect over 60,000 photographs? Like, is it something? I'm just curious. Like, what did you have to do to be able to have people, send you these, or even the film itself to be developed? I'm sure there was a lot of film out there that wasn't developed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't come across so much of the film that hadn't been developed, but it was amazing how back then word traveled by word. We don't talk about word of mouth anymore, but that was what it was, word of mouth. And churches helped me. I was very apolitical, and I didn't go to this church or that church or stick on this side or that side. Everybody knew about Project Save, and I wanted to reach out to everybody. And in the beginnings, it was mostly home visits, and that was because I didn't know what I was looking at. I needed people. And they became my surrogate grandparents. I needed them to tell me what I was looking at because I had not a clue. And over the years, in talking with so many people, I began to understand what I was looking at without people even having to say too much. And then we got to the point where people had unknown photographs. Oh, we don't know who these are. They were up in the attic for years. Grandma put them up there, and we never talked to her about them. I said, we want them because we can often tell you more about them than you know. Because we know we can identify photographers from maybe a distinct or unique backdrop. We can translate the Armenian on the reverse side. We know about placement of people in the photograph, who's in the center, who's standing up, that kind of thing. So it really was very important to visit with people. Some people did mail them, but that was only from long distances. And if they mailed them from a long distance, when I eventually got to that place, and it happened with places like Chicago and Fresno and even Albuquerque, New Mexico, I would visit with those people. I would make sure to make an appointment, set up an appointment to visit with them. And the Xerox machine was very helpful. I often Xerox photographs to send to people to help me identify what was going on.
What's incredible about this is the fact that, just like you said, no internet and whatnot. So I mean, there's a insane investigative protocol to this, or like a pipeline to this, right?
Yeah.
And so these days you can go in and Google search somebody's name and then some connection, connect the dots a lot easier and faster.
Of course.
But I mean, without that back then, I mean, home visits and whatnot, I mean, it's just kind of making the wheels spin in my head right now about what you guys must have gone through to be able to obtain this information.
Do you guys mind if I pop in for a second?
Sure,
No, go ahead.
I don't want to kind of put Ruth on the spot here or make her uncomfortable, but I really think that one of my goals in as the new executive director at Project Save is not just about launching this new chapter of the organization, but also it's really to I think Ruth is really kind of a treasure in the Armenian world, and not just in the Armenian world, but really in the world of archives, photography. I mean, she is because I've asked her a lot of those questions too that you guys are asking. I mean, it's been fascinating. I mean, I've always known of Ruth, having grown up around here, but to really get to know the kind of nuts and bolts of her journey is just astounding. I mean, she is really a
Yeah.
self-trained oral historian, photographic historian,
Yeah.
archivist. Her system that she's come up with over these many decades, the kind of patience and detail and time and just very humane. I mean, she has a way of just connecting with people,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
really the care that goes into all that is truly, truly astounding. And to do that consistently, some people might do that for a year, 10 years, five,
Yeah.
5 years,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but to do it consistently for like 45 years now and to build this institution that's been really under the radar and really it's one of a kind. There really is no, in the Armenian world, as far as all the research I've done, there is no institution that only is focused on collecting photographs.
Yeah.
So for one person to do all that for so long, of course, she's had a wonderful team, but still, I mean, this has been her driving energy all these years, and to do that with very little resources and just out of her own passion and kind of focused love of the culture and photography and storytelling and just people
Yeah.
Yeah.
is just absolutely incredible. That is I'm just very that makes me very grateful and honored to be part of Project Safe.
Well, I can say from my part, when we learn about people like yourselves, Ruth and Arto, it's amazing because we all get caught up with life, and especially here in the States, everybody's busy with, the I call it
Yeah.
the river that is going like 200 miles an hour, and you just
Yeah,
in it, and you're just going with the flow.
that's right.
And when you
Yeah.
get to learn about people like yourselves, it's just so refreshing.
It is.
I do want to mention that Armenian Museum of America is joining us live. They're watching, and they say,
Hey,
great job to you, Ruth and Arto, and your team. So they're here
uh,
with us.
Thank
th-
you.
those guys are great.
Hello,
They're
all.
they're awesome.
Yeah. And I want to mention to our audience who is watching us live, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat and we'll bring it on. We do have a question from Cynthia Kevorkian, who's asking, do photographs have to be originals? Sometimes it's hard part with originals. Basically, she means it's hard to
Yeah.
get them. So sometimes it could be a scan or even someone taking a picture of the picture,
Yeah, no, we work with originals. So we let people know that they should scan their photos. These days, it's so easy to do that anyway for their own records and for their. But we're a hard copy archive, and that's what sets us apart is that we work with the hard copies. Of course, going forward, there are now a lot of photographers that are just working in the digital realm, obviously, right? So, but our archivists, I should also mention that along with myself, we have a new team of two archivists as well. So we're growing, and they are trained in uh, digital archiving as well.
Mhm.
So of course, going forward, that is an issue. But yeah, no, we don't. We work with hard copies. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what do you guys do to? Is there a process to preserve? Because I know photographs, especially if people touch it with their fingers. We all have acid in
Yeah.
our fingers and everything. What do you guys do to protect these to make sure that they last, for ages to come? Is there a special
Um,
treatment I should ask?
yeah. So our archivists are of course that's why they are on our team. They use all current methods of preservation.
Hmm.
We as best as we can, temperature control, security.
Wow.
Everything is preserved to the standards of uh, archival systems, across the board. Going forward, those are things that we do. Like with any other industry, we're always trying to keep up with standards, right? They change over time. There might be new technologies, there might be new methods, so we're always making sure that we keep up with those practices. I know that Ruth, I mean, she could speak to. There's also if we get packages that contain um, any photographic materials that need a little bit of work. I know Ruth has told me all kinds of stories about how she's used steam, she's used other methods to get things without any kind of negative impact, to kind of rejuvenate and preserve as best as possible what we get. So we're super, super, super careful, very, very
Yeah.
careful.
Ruth, what methods can you share with us? Some secrets of how to preserve
Well, I don't know
photography.
that
No,
takes
reason
a
I
big
ask
step,
is I have pictures from my great grandparents who
Yeah.
like from Antap and before the genocide, even after the genocide, and obviously people tend to have it in their little albums. This is passed on from my
Yeah.
grandma to my mom, my uncle, and again I
Could
know
get brittle.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and like I have a picture of my great grandparents in Antap with the way they used to dress, and when we meet, we're going to talk
Yes,
about this
yes.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
what are some ways to preserve these pictures? I guess a DIY home version, if you can elaborate on that.
Well, you might want to have it framed and put on the wall to look at every day. But you can all if there's any chance of it getting in sunlight, you can put I think it's a UV glass on it or something that keeps out keeps the sun from damaging it. And keep glass off of the photograph. It should be raised 1/8 of an inch by a matting, so you don't want glass to come in contact with the photograph. We've received photographs in frames, and the gelatin of the photograph has gotten stuck on the glass. And that's a heartbreaker because, I can soak this whole thing in water and try and get it off, but it's, not.
Vic, you want to hear you want to hear the short answer?
Yeah.
You got to send them to Project Save.
All right. Okay. All right.
Because
As long as you send me a digital version back.
So that's why we tell people that
Yeah.
the best thing to do is make sure you're digitizing your photos. These days, it's so easy to do that. Make sure you're digitizing your photos, and then, the whole point of what we're doing is that, and by the way, this is something I do want to mention. I think that what people need to understand about Project Saves, one of the things that we want to drive home, is that I think for a very long time, they had conflated the work that Project Save does with Ruth as a person. So, and I think sometimes they would think of Project Save almost like a very serious hobby. You know what I mean? Like a pet project of this person, in this case, Ruth, right?
Yeah.
But we've always wanted, and Ruth has always been very clear about that too, and that's I want to drive that home as well. We do things. It's a photography archive. The Armenian element is kind of secondary. It's a photography archive.
Yeah.
So the photographs are handled, in the highest degree of archival preservation, lighting, temperature, as Ruth says, making sure the materiality, things are not stuck together, they're not dust, things like that. So what we tell people is you wanna if you do have photographs, and I'm not, I was joking around. They don't have to come to Project Save, although we'd love that. But you do want to make sure that, while they're in good condition, make sure you scan them, and then do a little research and see what you can do to really make sure that these are preserved, not just for yourselves and for your families, but these are historical documents. And while they may seem within the family, they might seem like, oh yeah, whatever, that's my uncle in Madash or Aintab or Palu or whatever. But when you take a step back, these are incredible documents about culture, history, about turmoil, politics, art,
Yeah.
sociology. I mean, they're just filled with so much information that is not just relevant, by the way, to the Armenian world, but is really relevant to just global history. I mean, at the end of the day, Armenians are just part of the fabric of global society as human beings, and And I think that so it's very important to treasure the photos that people have within their families. Make sure they're doing what they can to digitize them so that they always have them and that they're backed up and so forth. But
Yeah.
then to reach out to various organizations, whether it's Project Save or whichever organization, to really make sure that not just that they're preserved logistically, properly, in terms of the archival sense, but then they're also living, that they're brought to life, that they can be
Yeah.
shared with people, that they can be shared with scholars, artists, writers, students, young people. So
And
I think
and each photograph tells a story,
Yeah.
obviously, right? And depending
absolutely.
Stories
where
upon
it's taken,
stories.
and where the setting was. Obviously, we have a lot of pictures with backgrounds and things like that. And the reason I bring that up because Haraj Kozibeokian is joining us, who's one of our guests.
Yeah.
He's the great I should say rug guru, and
the rug
he
guru.
actually offered his services. And he said the backdrops of many old Armenian photographs usually have a carpet. If identification is needed, I am offering my volunteer services. So
Oh, thank you,
he's on
Haraj.
board to help you
All
guys.
right.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't watched our live with Haraj, please go.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing show. We're gonna have him back on soon as well.
Man with a lot of information.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Haraj. I appreciate that.
Arto, I know we talked about your, Armenia, but when we talked before, when we had our greet and meet, you mentioned something about a mission that you had in Armenia. Was it part of the same thing, or was there something else? The time you spent.
To be honest, I'm not remembering saying that. But what
I
ended
mean,
up
the
happening,
purpose of that
the
trip,
purpose,
like
yeah.
the purpose. Yeah, yeah.
I'm very grateful. Like I said, I mean, I had never been there. I didn't go there with any. I'm not. I make no qualms about the fact that I'm not a very ethnocentric person. And what I mean by that is, I've always been proud of Armenian culture, but I'm not. I don't privilege my Armenianness above my humanness. So for me, being an American is just as important as my being an Armenian. I'm just as proud of that as I am
Yeah.
of, like I just don't. So when I went to Armenia, I didn't go there with any kind of these patriotic kind of. That's just not my style.
Mm-hmm.
I went there because I had a job. I got a job, and I went there, and it was an adventure. And of course, there's no question that obviously, being of Armenian descent, that was obviously an element. And my mom's family had lived there for many years after moving there during the repatriation around World War II. So of course, those were elements. Now, when I got there and I started the job, I was I feel very blessed and very fortunate that it exceeded what I was hoping. I had this idea that, oh, this might be like a startup. Academics don't get to be part of a startup at a
Yeah,
university. All the other places I taught, whether it was in Boston or in the UK, these are old institutions. These are your courses, you teach them, whatever, you make an impact within that realm, within those parameters. In Armenia, I mean, I and others who were there from that ground level, we basically built the institution. We got to shape everything, not just in the classroom, but policies, reputation, branding, PR. I mean, everything. The identity of the university we got to shape from the get-go. So then that became kind of a mission, and for me, then that narrowed down to this idea that I really wanted, through creative writing, through literature, through cultural studies, my goal was to impart to the students and, whoever was willing to listen, but definitely the students, that, I think it's always important, first and foremost, to be in touch with your humanity. Having it's one thing to be proud of your nationality and your country and all that stuff. But I don't privilege those things. For me, the most important things are being a good human being, being a really good critical thinker, which I think is not just lacking in Armenia, but globally, that's a major problem. But I think it is especially a problem in small, very homogeneous countries that are struggling in different ways. I think critical thinking is the most important thing, and a real appreciation of culture. And what I mean by that is not just culture, like Baru Seven, not just the stuff we're kind of brought up with as children over and Sayat Nova, Gomidas, Baru Sevag, all these things. Those things are all great, but they become a little bit, in my view and in my experience, when people talk about those things, they're just talking.
Yeah.
How many people thoroughly have read Baru Sevag and can have a really in-depth conversation about Baru Sevag?
Yeah.
They can't.
They
They can
can't.
they can quote kind of nationalistic type things about Baru Sevag.
Yeah, and most of the sorry, I was gonna say most of most of the information is just parents passing down, like instilling in them. We have these great authors, the
Yes.
names you hear them so much, and you're growing up, you know about it. I know, I've heard those names, so many times, but I personally haven't read it.
That's
So
right.
and it's sad that I haven't. We
Right.
should all Armenians at least. I'm not saying go research and become a specialist on, let's say, Baru Sevak or Shidaz or anybody else, but at least know about it, or at least read something from them.
I have to shamelessly admit that I went through it in private Armenian institutions, as I've mentioned in previous episodes. I just forgot about a lot of that stuff. So this is almost like this crash course of reintroduction, right?
Well,
and I know a lot.
Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
No. Well, I was just going to say that. So the thing is that a lot of us have gone through in our families, or if we went to any kind of Armenian school or anything like that. But the problem with all of that is it's always filtered through taking these just human beings. I mean, Gomidas was a person, right?
Yeah.
Baru Sevak was a person. Zabel Yesayan is a person. Hagop Oshagan. These are just people who were artists, and who were involved in other, whether they were educators or business people or clergy or whatever they were. But what we do over time, and this is, it's not anybody's fault, but what we've done over time is those human beings with art that they've created have been taken and they've been twisted into these filters of patriotic, nationalist kind of measuring sticks, so that when people do know about Chadens, what they take Chadens, and Chadens become some nationalistic, whereas Chadens himself, that's not what Chadens was, or Gomidas himself, that isn't exactly what he was. The guy just wrote music,
Yeah.
But now we've taken that music and we've turned it into some sacred, untouchable thing that only reflects something about Armenianness, and that's not that to say that, of course it is. I mean, he was Armenian and he wrote a lot of he it's implied that the things that Chadens wrote were Armenian. I mean, that obviously the guy was Armenian, but that isn't the end all be all. These are human beings creating art in a world of art.
Yeah.
So, like when I teach T.S. Eliot, or if I teach Shakespeare, I don't sit around and emphasize Shakespeare's Englishness.
Yeah.
It's poetry.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
That's a great point. Yeah, and I think that is
So-
a little bit of an issue. I think in our culture that we nationalize it so much, but these people, whatever they wrote, it was their feelings, what they felt. If the poem was about their mother or father or just an experience of life, it that resonates towards everybody, because everybody experienced that. So that's how we need to bring it to the forefront and translate it and talk about it.
That's one, exactly. And the other, my other point about that is that once you do that and you see these people as people and you see their art as art in the global stage of art, you can also have a critical discussion, which again connects to what I'm saying about critical thinking. Because can you say anything bad about Gomidas? I don't think you can, right?
No.
Right.
No.
But you should be able to, actually. I mean, when I say bad, obviously I'm simplifying, but we should be able to have critical discussions to say, you know what, this poem isn't very good, or I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. When I teach, so at AUA, that was my mission. That we need to have a proper appreciation of culture and a
Mhm.
proper discussion of culture.
Mhm.
Because by not doing that, that's a real disservice to the progress in Armenia, or the lack of progress in Armenia. Armenia, you can't have a healthy country without a healthy, innovative, cultural discourse. It's just not
Mhm.
possible. There is
Yeah.
no, when we think of Britain, when we think of the United States, we can have whatever criticisms we want of those countries, but we all love their culture, right? We
Yeah.
all know their music, we all know their fashion, we all know their whatever it is, movies, this, that. Part of that is because we don't, we take away the ethnic elements, and it just becomes about the culture itself, whatever cultural output. I mean, I'm simplifying here a little bit, but
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, you get my
Yeah,
meaning.
it's
That
it's like a self-alienation,
Yeah. Yeah.
a
I
more
know
or
little
what.
bit,
less.
a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
You know,
It really is.
we tend to ghettoize our own culture.
Yeah, it's true.
And so that really was my mission. That's what it was. And the beautiful thing was that our Armenians in Armenia, young folks, people under 25, under 30, it was as if they already kind of get that. And once you have that in a more codified setting, like a classroom or a university, and once they could have a discussion about that in a more controlled environment, and maybe away from their families, or where they don't feel shy, or like they can't speak their minds,
Mhm.
it really was an avalanche. I mean, really, there's a whole generation in Armenia that are just, they're starving to have a much more critical, much more refined and nuanced discussion about what it means to be Armenian, what it means to be in Armenia, what is Armenian culture, what are all these heroic Armenian cultural figures that we've put on a pedestal,
Mhm.
and can we maybe talk about them in a much more sophisticated way that would then maybe turn into better cultural production. Because
Yeah.
my thing with the students was, is there anyone right now that's the new Chadens or the new Gomidas?
No.
I don't know. Because we're so stuck in the past, and we've put all these things on, all these people and all this artwork on a
Yeah.
pedestal,
Mhm.
that I don't know, we've done a bit of a disservice to current just cultural production. You
Yeah.
always need new cultural production at a very high standard.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I mean, let's say 20, 30 years from now, we're going to look back and, like you said, is there going to be Charans? Is there going to be Komitas? We don't
Well,
know.
hence why the diaspora seems to be a lot more, and I'm not criticizing anybody directly out of Armenia, but to his point, that's why the diaspora is more stir. You and I have talked about it, but he just kind of shed a whole new different light on this, where you almost feel like a lot of the diaspora is starving for that,
Yeah.
and they're striving above and beyond, as opposed to being stuck in a bubble.
But I think the diaspora has a little bit of a fault in that as well, because we, being
Sure, there are the pros and cons.
far away from the homeland, we tend to nationalize everything because we're trying to dearly hold on to our memories,
Right.
whatever we have.
But at the same time, how many times have we ever been in conversations with peers, friends, whatever the case is, like, oh, I wish Armenians from Armenia were a little bit more like this and like that, right?
Don't forget I mean, in the past 30 years, the amount of things they've gone through and the changes and so it's, but hopefully I know it has changed, and I think it is changing. And people like yourselves are the ones who are helping this change,
Yeah, and I think I want to be clear here. It's not, for me, that, as you guys I think are pointing out, I think there is a problem in, it's a two-way street, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And there's no criticism here. It's not a criticism of
No,
Armenia
not
or
at
the
all.
or
Not
the
at all.
diaspora.
Mhm.
And I think you're right. I think what my issue on the diasporan side is that, for example, you use the word homeland, right?
Mhm.
For me personally, I don't think of Armenia as my homeland, and I know that that's a little bit, it may sound weird to people, but I just don't. And I don't see that as a problem. Armenia is a country, and I hope that it becomes more and more of a thriving, wonderful country. But my homeland is the United States. I mean,
Mhm.
I feel
Yeah.
rooted here, and I feel like it's these words, the way we say things. I think they're
Mhm.
important, because if you can have real honesty, right, and get to have self-awareness, then in a way I can be more of I can be more of service. I can provide more to the Armenian world if I'm approaching it in a much more honest way. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
instead of getting nostalgic about it, or
Yeah.
instead of projecting, as you were saying, Vic, I think in the diaspora, it's natural. I think a lot of people are immigrants,
Yeah.
and I think that they've gone through a lot of hardship. So I think they project a kind of yearning, a kind of idealized
What was left behind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
see, here's the thing: that word "homeland," when you say it, and I agree with you, it identifies with each person differently. So
that's right.
for you, you're born in the States, you grew up here. Yes, you're Armenian, but you're right. This is your homeland. For me, I was born there.
Right.
When I say homeland, doesn't mean I disown America. You know, this is my homeland too. But
Right.
so everybody
No, in your
identifies
case, absolutely.
different.
That's
Yeah,
literally your
but it's
homeland.
okay.
Absolutely.
But see, your statement is okay as well. It's like
Right.
nobody should crucify you over the fact that you say,
Yeah.
well, I don't see it like that's my homeland. Well, that's the truth. It is not your homeland because you're born here. You grew up here. It might be your, I don't know if you want to call it the mother. I don't know what the word is.
I tend to use motherland.
Yeah, motherland,
Yeah.
whatever, because
I don't
it's culturally that's where your ancestors are from. So that's one thing. So everybody identifies differently, and people shouldn't be attacking one another. Well, how dare you say this? How dare you? So,
Well, I
but
think that's where you guys are. I was saying to you this before we got on the air, but I think you guys are doing such a great. I mean, it's an entertaining show, first of all, but you guys are also doing a great service, because I think in the Armenian world, both in Armenia and the diaspora, there's this bizarre lack of platforms when you can have really lively and just friendly, critical discussions like this,
yeah,
that I think are so important, and they're really lacking in the Armenian world, I feel. So you guys are, it's great that you guys are doing what you're doing for
thank
that.
you. Well,
Nice.
we always we've mentioned this 1,000 times already, but it was just him and I having conversations, and we
Yeah.
just said, why don't we have this live, I guess,
that
with
was-
intellectuals like yourselves. But Ruth, I know you were going to be live with us, obviously, but we have some pictures I want to share
Yeah,
with our
we'd love to
audience
talk about some of these.
and talk about these pictures. I don't know if Ruth you can watch. Maybe Ruth can connect to the YouTube and Lauren.
I get on your email and look at the photographs that you sent in your email.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. So
If you those, I think it was in your show tomorrow.
I think Arto, did you?
Yeah.
I don't know if you
And
want.
I also want to thank you guys for the work you do. I mean,
Oh,
it's
thank you, Ruth.
how your generation is spreading the news. It's fabulous.
Thank you, Ruth.
I mean, we hope we can
Humbled.
come to the level of what you have done
Yeah.
for our culture and everything that you've done. So, it's something small we're doing. I think that's what every Armenian should do, and it doesn't matter what form it is, as long as you can do something to bring these stories to the forefront and talk about it,
Connect
have
things. It's fun.
conversations. Like I said, I did this because of the fact that I feel like, I don't want to say the word I was robbed of it, but I didn't get to experience and learn this stuff as a child growing up here. And that's not the fault of my parents or anything. It's just how life was, especially being immigrants. So I wanted in a way to give back for my kids to, as they're growing, to listen to this and learn about it. The other day, my daughter came home and she's fourth grade. She has a history class now, and she
yeah,
started
you told me
talking
about
about Hike and Bell and how they're going to be talking about Vartan Mami Konyan. And she's like, Dad, you talk about this stuff, and our teacher's gonna teach us. And I'm like, well, you already know because of what I've talked about, So, and that's the goal, is to the next generation to know about who we were as people, because that's going to make them greater people in every decision they make in their life going forward. So I think, and that's why I say everybody do something in some form and shape. It doesn't have to be this crazy idea, but do something, So, but I'm bringing this picture, Arto.
Yes,
if you can talk about this,
Sure.
a little bit, what time frame this is from, and what this picture
So
represents.
This photo is from 1901. And you can see there, it's the Kondasian Copper and Ironwork Company. Um, and so the thing that from my perspective, as we look at these photos, um, what I'm very interested in is that a lot of these photos, they have their history, and that's something that Ruth can probably speak more to than I can. But what I find fascinating about our tens of thousands of photos is when I look at them, come to them from an artist's perspective. Not, I'm not a historian. I'm a literary person, a literature person. So when I look at these as a poet, as an artist, I'm fascinated by just the artistry of it. So in other words, when I look at this photo, yes, these are clearly this is a pre-genocide Armenian immigrant family, right, in Boston, one of the oldest communities, one of the oldest diasporan communities. And clearly, you can tell from this photo they're a successful business,
Yeah, yeah.
right? The beautiful work they're doing there. But what's been fascinating to me in these months that Ruth has passed on the torch to me is that when I look at these photos, I'm blown away at the kind of the humanity that I see in the photos. That what I see in these photos are people in the process of becoming. That's been my kind of my, for lack of a better
That's
phrase.
that's a
Yeah.
great thing.
Yeah,
Ruth, can you?
yeah, Ruth, do you know the photograph that I'm talking about?
I
It's
do, and I'm sorry
yeah.
I'm having trouble coming up with the email. But anyway,
It's okay.
But anyway, I know the photograph.
Yeah.
The Galicians were from Marash. I received this from probably a cousin of, or maybe, a cousin of the Galician who's in the photograph, who's probably front and center, with his workmen. The work people are not Armenians necessarily at
Right.
all.
Mm-hmm.
And they were responsible. His company gilded the dome on the State House, and he's the one who put up $10,000. And this is way back when $10,000 was probably like $1 million today, to save the U.S. Constitution, which sits in Boston Harbor today, saved from being taken out to sea and sunk because it was in such bad condition. But it was a historic. Galician loved history, evidently, and felt that it was a historic monument to freedom in the United States. And so with his 10,000 and then other people put money in, he saved the Constitution. And every year when we celebrate, I think it's Memorial Day, we remember Galician.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, it's something I had no idea about. That's
Yeah. The Constitution
amazing.
was one of the most.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's amazing the history that goes beyond the photograph.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. It's one thing to just look at a photograph, but knowing the story behind it and who these people were, what they did, and I think that's key with photographs and archiving, is to tell their story of okay, why was this picture taken? Who were they? What were they doing? Or is just a random? I mean, nowadays, obviously with Instagram, there's a billion pictures, but those aren't interesting. This is what and I think photographs back then meant more than they do now, in my opinion. Now it's just random snapping pictures right and left.
Of course, because the technology was also new, right?
Yeah.
So each photograph was a much more prized artifact in many ways.
Yeah. In Armenian we say on mahatsak, meaning that's you become immortal or immortalized.
But the thing about this photograph too, and Ruth kind of let's this one as well, right?
No, you want? I can go back. Sorry,
no, it's okay. No, because I can say the same thing about this one as well.
Yeah.
So this one is the Coffee Cup Donut Shop in Springfield, Massachusetts, in 1952. And same thing here. Like you'll notice, that this is during an election, a presidential
Yeah.
election, right? So again, what's very important to me going forward with Project Save is I think it's very important for Project Save to be on the map as an American institution. Because what you see in these photographs, this one, for example, and the one previously, but in these two, you see these Armenian immigrants or second generation. These are Armenians in the process of becoming American, right?
Yeah.
We have thousands of photographs of Armenians becoming French. We have thousands of photographs of Armenians becoming Argentinian, right? I think that's very, very important because as a photographic archive, that connects us again to a much larger story of global history, the story of migration, the story of war, turmoil, the stories of politics, stories of, right? In other words, I think it's very important for us to once these photos become humanized, and we see that these are, yes, they are Armenian. Yes, obviously they have their particular story of immigration, but they are also people that they are becoming part of the fabric of whatever country they're in. And I think that's important in terms of us as an archive telling these stories so that we're not just talking to each other, right? I think a lot of times in the Armenian world, it's kind of like preaching to the choir a little bit.
Yeah.
We're all talking to each other. I think what I want to do with Project Save, it's such a treasure and such a all this work of all these decades. I think the next step now is to really get this out to the non-Armenian world, and these photographs are a great example of that. So here's people in central Massachusetts in 1952 who are not only have started this successful business, but they're clearly showing their pride as newly minted Americans.
Yeah.
And it's also just such
I appreciate Arto's vision.
Yeah.
That vision is
Ruth,
very important.
do we know much about this lady here in the picture and the business?
Yeah, we do. I believe she's an employee, not necessarily Armenian.
Okay.
We have photo donor files for every donor, and I would look in there and I would find the information. But since I'm not in the office, I can't do that. But the family, the owners who
we can wait,
there
Ruth.
also.
No, just kidding.
I mean, yes, I don't live there anymore. Project Save was in my home for the first, I don't know, 18 years.
Oh wow.
Wow.
All
Well,
right.
that's where I saved on rent and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then the Armenian Museum was kind enough to offer us space.
Oh wow.
That's really cool.
But you see,
That's very cool.
The thing too is I think that's the beauty of it. I think that I want to be able to balance that idea of, as you guys were saying, it's so wonderful to know the stories of the photographs. I think that's vital, right?
Yeah.
But I think, the perspective that I want to also bring that I think might have been, just kind of balance it out a little bit, is that when I've shared these photos with people that aren't Armenian, who know nothing or know very little about Armenian history, but they're photographers or they're archivists or they're artists, or I'm not saying this in a flippant way, but it's almost like they kind of don't even care about the story about the photograph. They're just fascinated just by the photo itself, almost like a work of art.
Interesting.
And I think that's really important as well, because you don't know where that might lead. You know what I'm saying? So on the one hand, I think it's important to have the historical aspects, the cultural, sociological aspects. I think it's also important, once an archive is this big, I think it's important to open it up to other kinds of fresh ways of bringing these photographs to life.
Yeah.
You know?
I think also.
Great point.
Go ahead, Ruth. Sorry.
Well, no, I absolutely agree with Arto. I so appreciate his vision for the future of Project Save, and each generation moves a little bit forward. You know.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is I think also just as because we see the past in black and white, I think a lot of us are infatuated with the idea that okay, we want to know what it was like just people in color, just how we live now, and we don't get we see so and on YouTube now they have these remakes or not, they get colorized, like how back then especially the videos were really fast, everybody's moving really, but they slowed it down, they made it more realistic coloring. So when you see that, you're like, oh my god, you start identifying that these were just regular people, but there were no cars back then. But I wanted this picture right here. Is this a funeral or
no? So
no? Okay.
What this is from 1906.
Uh-huh.
And it's West Hoboken, New Jersey.
Okay.
And it's they're laying the foundation for the Holy Cross Armenian Church.
Oh, okay. Wow, I was off. Sorry, just looked.
Well,
it could be. Yeah, but that's why it's so important to talk with people and identify the photos, so we don't make mistakes like that.
Yeah.
Because you're right, Vic. It looks very solemn. So,
yeah.
You're right. Yeah. But yeah, no, they're laying the foundation for the building of the church. Yeah, and again, here we have a pre-genocide photograph. So, and I think Vic, sorry, I couldn't tell who was speaking in that a little earlier, but that's one of the things I think. Again, having the historical aspect. Trying as best as we can, as Ruth says, because we want to be correct. Also, we want to know if we can what the stories are in these photographs. But also, as you say, there's something about just what was life like, for these people, and that's where I want to bring in. We're going to be doing some artist residencies. We're going to be doing different types of events and different types of initiatives where people with totally different perspectives who aren't Armenian, don't know much about these photographs, but in their own capacity as a painter, as a writer, as a poet, as a filmmaker, they can bring these photographs to life in ways that maybe we hadn't thought about, But those will hopefully all be ways to make this a living archive. We don't want this to be. You don't want to have 60,000 photographs. And for them to be kind of like this academic kind of, some historian with a pipe coming in and lecturing us, we want it to be, that's important, but we also want it to be a living archive where we can, as you say, we can remember that, these were people with their struggles, with their having to pay bills, whatever ways they had to go through to get to this country or whatever country the photograph is in, to build a life. And to make their way in the world. And what are the ways that we can bring these things to life so that we can not only understand the past, but we can better understand who we are today and kind of what is our context now? How did we get here? How did we all get here and where are we headed?
Yeah, I think also it's bringing this in a way with the new platform maybe to attract people who might not be interested, that they might not even know that they're interested in something like this, because like you said, when you go, first of all, when you do lectures and things like that, not everybody can attend and not everybody knows about it unless they're in that network of what's happening. And then when you go there and like you said, somebody just like lecturing, it might not be pleasant for everybody because you want to make it fun, you want the youngsters to get involved and appreciate what this is. So there has to be a new way to bring this to life, to a broader audience, I guess.
Right.
Ruth, did you want to say something?
I'm sorry.
Ruth, did you want to say something? Sorry, I did.
Oh no, I was agreeing. Absolutely right. On all points about moving forward in new directions.
Yeah. Now this looks like this picture is a bike shop. Bicycle shop.
Yeah, I love this photo. This is kind of a little bit more in your neck of the woods. This is Fresno.
Okay.
It's 1910. And this is the
again pre-genocide.
It's unbelievable to me.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah.
It's the Nishkian cyclery. Isn't that a great name for their show? It's a cyclery.
Cyclery.
It's called the Nishkian Bicycle and Phonograph House. And what I love about this is you have a few things here. I love this photo. You have photography is a new technology. That's one, right?
Mhm.
Bicycles are fairly new,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's two. Phonographs are pretty new. That's three. And you have these Armenians who are, Ruth might speak to this more than I can, but they're either first generation or second. So they're new as Americans, right? So you have this collision of, in my world where I come from, this is what I would lecture about all the time. I mean, this eternity. You
Yeah.
have a photograph that is completely captured both in the human beings in the photograph, the subjects, but also the photography itself, but also the bicycles there are. It's capturing really the start of the 20th century. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Arto,
just
you've
incredible.
literally changed my perspective into viewing photographs for the rest of my life. I'm not even exaggerating. I'm
You did
not
your part.
at all.
Thank you.
That's pretty cool. Well, I appreciate that.
Wow, that is. I mean, you mentioning this and just looking at it, that is amazing. And and it also talks about the Armenian, that strive we have to always
Exactly.
create and the business aspect of
Yeah.
things.
I
We
mean,
were always progressing, always
Yep.
progressing.
Right. Right. Taking a risk and that
Yeah,
innovation, I mean, it wasn't enough for them to do bicycles. They're going to do bicycles and phonographs,
phonographs.
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I
it's
mean, it's
amazing.
just that's incredible. And it's not New York City. It's not Paris. I mean, it's Fresno.
It's Fresno,
So
yeah,
and I love Fresno. I've been there many times, but I'm assuming in 1910 it wasn't exactly a bustling,
But yeah.
yeah.
it
Um,
was a farming,
Of
you
course,
know,
and we're
large.
known for that as well. We
Yeah,
were involved in a lot of the
right.
farming.
So for these guys to take that risk at that time is really something.
so cool.
Yeah. Let's see here. This one. What can we talk about this picture? By the way,
Uh,
before we go,
yeah.
audience members, guys who are watching, questions, please ask us. Feel free.
Miyama check.
Yeah.
So this
um,
one, I know that Ruth will have some good background about this one. This is the Kondasian coat factory, and
Hmm.
this is again pre-genocide, 1912 in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And again, what's fascinating here is that you have, Armenians historically have been very involved in textiles, right? And I can speak to this also personally that, my family, when they um moved to on both sides, my mom and my dad's, they separately ended up in Massachusetts in the 1950s and 1960s. And on both sides, they had tailors and people that worked in textiles. So they worked at textile factories or in tailoring shops and so forth. And the Kondasians are one of the well-known. And I think Ruth, they're still in business. Am I correct in that?
No, not Kondasian themselves. And there is a street in Watertown named Kondasian Street in East Watertown, up the hill where you find a
Yes.
factory building
Yes.
where they did move to that factory building. And then another Armenian, John Arasian, set up his coat factory there.
Mhm.
And he now they're not manufacturing anymore. They sell quality suits and sports stuff. It's
Mhm.
a lot of Bostonians will come out to Watertown to have a private session with John Arasian and be fitted for a real
Right.
handsome outfit.
And also, guys, one thing I'd like to mention, kind of adjacent to this photograph, um, we should also remember that, or it'd be interesting maybe for your audience to know. So this kind of workshop atelier here, this was not far from the Hood rubber plant, which is now a kind of biotech kind of place. But that's where the Armenian Cultural Center is now, and two of the Armenian churches are. And that Hood rubber plant also employed a lot of Armenians, including Arshil Gorky, before
Yeah.
he became Darshal Gorky that we all know. But he lived here in Watertown with family, and he worked at that plant. So there were a number of kind of businesses like this, and factories and ateliers in the area, and some of them were owned by Armenians.
Yeah, and Armenians, if you look at history, we even when the big migration happened in the late '80s and early '90s, we tend to kind of migrate towards one another, and we start different businesses. So it was kind of the same thing. So they were like obviously in the same region.
Yeah, I mean, my family.
Yeah.
Dad's a designer. My dad's side, just like yours, tailors, long line of tailors and whatnot, settled here in the early 70s. But then recently, I remember telling you, I found out that my great grandfather on my dad's side actually settled in Boston from Syria in 1912.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. I should probably talk to you guys about obtaining some of these photos.
So,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
so what an amazing thing. He was literally around when some of these photos were taken.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was in
That's
Boston.
amazing.
I mean, yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, you need to go on a adventure.
No. I have the right people for the photographs. They actually have photographs. They really do.
Yeah.
All right, here we're looking at what seems to be a bus, some sort, right? Or
So this is another one of my favorite. I love this photo. So this is New York City. This is also
1912.
pre-genocide, 1912. This is the Armenian Students Association
wow.
of New York City. Which
ASA, good old ASA.
ASA still exists.
I've been to a lot of ASA parties as a youngster.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, these guys were partying back in 1912.
Yeah, they
and
dress
here they
better
are.
than us.
Yeah, definitely.
And so what it's just so lovely, it's just looking at and also, by the way, even though it's true, right? I love, I don't know who these people are, but it's so great to look at their fashion, to look at they've rented this bus or this kind of vehicle.
It's the party bus.
So, yeah, it's the party bus.
I mean, literally, it is a party bus.
Yeah. And also the fact that there's a whole bunch of them. I mean, it's not just, I don't know how many people that is, but that's a lot of people,
Yeah.
And you can see it's men, it's women, it's, it's a very interesting photo. And it just goes to show that, we, and again, this is not a criticism, but we're so wrapped up in, it's as if the genocide is almost like our Big Bang. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, what was before the Big Bang in the universe? We don't know. Well, we kind of forget that in Armenian modern history, there was thousands of years. I mean, there was life before the genocide.
Yeah,
you and I have talked
well,
about this.
That's the whole thing about this is us talk. Yeah, we're going to cover the genocide. We're going to cover it.
Yes.
We have
we touch
historians.
on it every now and
we
then,
touch
but
on it, but that was the mission. Is like, okay, enough.
It feels like
I
it's a
get
wall,
it.
right?
We need to continue to fight for it and talk about it and make sure it is constantly recognized, just like how the Holocaust, the Jewish culture does the same thing. But we cannot forget about pre-genocide, the things that have taken place going way back, So
and the reason I think one of the reasons that's important is because one, it just, again, it humanizes Armenian history. These are people, and just like millions and billions of other people, many of them, they were not just refugees from a catastrophic historical event.
Good point.
There were many people that, like any other immigrant to the United States or to France or to the UK or to Cuba or to Brazil, they were just trying to make a better life for themselves, like any other immigrant. And they were by doing so, they were also contributing to whatever country they emigrated to. And here you see, I love looking at these photos because you look at these faces, they have no idea about an Armenian genocide. They have no idea. They're just living their lives in New York City in 1912.
I mean, what's amazing is like there's almost 30 people on this bus, and each of them had, if let's assume that each of them got married and had children, and those roots just
Right.
continued. And some
That's
people
right.
might not even know that their great grandparents are sitting here in this photograph.
Possibly,
You
yeah.
know,
Well, and Ruth can
And they're
speak to this.
unchaperoned.
I'm sorry.
And they're unchaperoned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, and also, by the way, that's a good point you just made, because one of the things that I love. Another reason I think Ruth is such a valuable kind of cultural figure in the Armenian world. When you say that any one of these people in this photo, they're children, right? They
Yeah.
all had. So Ruth, right? Ruth herself she's half Armenian, right? And her mother's side is old blue blood Yankee, Mayflower type American. So she herself is an example of that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very important that as we think about where we are as Armenians, as Americans, as European Armenians, Middle Eastern Armenians, we have to also think about, we have so many photographs in our archives. People might be half Armenian, they might be quarter Armenian, they might be married to a non-Armenian. I think that those are all important things we need to keep in mind as we think about the tapestry of
Yeah.
Armenian culture.
And if I can add to that, and Ruth being half Armenian, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't matter if you're half Armenian, quarter Armenian, and we actually received messages from Armenians in Middle America, or even in the South, that
In the most random places.
that they knew they were Armenian or part Armenian, and they didn't know anything about it, and they randomly found our podcast and started learning, and they reach out to us. We had one of our fans, I think her name was Emily. She had reached out to us, and now she has her daughter listening to the podcast.
Wow,
Because
that's
her daughter
fabulous.
is, she's half Armenian. Her daughter's a quarter Armenian, but and just it's amazing that people. It's waking up that. I don't know what the
You're
term
finding
is.
out about your heritage, and
yeah.
you're piecing clues together.
And it doesn't mean you forget about the other half of your heritage.
Sure.
If it's
Or a
Irish,
portion
German,
of it,
whatever it is.
Whatever it is, your portion of it. You're piecing things together.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
eventually,
Well,
and people. What I was going to say is, eventually, once you learn about your history, or let's say Armenian history, you're going to realize how we are so connected to the Italians, to the Germans, and so many, our paths have crossed so
Absolutely.
much by just learning about our kingdoms, and how these people lived together.
Yeah.
They traded together, and even got married. I mean, we have queens and kings that were half,
we've discussed
so many other cultures. But yeah.
Plus, Armenians were business people who did trade with countries throughout the world.
Yes.
I mean, Flynn Eintab sent sheep intestines to Italy for Italians to make sausages.
Wow.
This was pre-genocide.
Wow.
And I'm knocking my head against the wall saying, oh my God, I wouldn't have ever thought of that if I hadn't been talking to this guy about what his father did for work.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, we have another picture here. This seems to be some kind of a banquet, or
So now we're gonna take a trip to Germany.
oh,
Okay.
So this is the Funker Kasern camp. These are Armenians, Stuttgart, Germany, right after World War II.
Wow.
So there were many different camps and systems set up to help people that were kind of refugees caught in the war, and this is one of those. This is one of those places. This was in Stuttgart in 1948. And again, what's amazing here is just it's such a poignant photo, because these are people that have gone through one of the most horrific moments in the 20th century, and they're trying to maintain their dignity, they know what's coming next, right? At that time, people thought, how do we pick up the pieces It felt like kind of civilization had fallen apart at the time. And here you have these, all these people trying to figure out what's next in
Yeah.
their lives, and keeping in mind, by the way, that these people, who knows what had happened with their families during
Yeah.
World War
In the
One,
world,
the
yeah,
genocide, or in World War Two. Maybe some of these people, they lost family in fighting in World War
yeah.
Two.
Especially
But
on the Russian side,
yeah, yeah.
a lot
So
of
it's a very
Armenians perished. Yeah.
it's a very poignant photo.
I've noticed. I mean, first there's the rug on the wall,
Yeah.
and then there's someone's sculpture in it. I can't tell.
Yeah, it's. I'm not sure. Ruth, do you know much? Do you know? Do you remember this
I
photo?
wish I was looking at photos. I can't seem to pick up the photos off the email like I did earlier.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah,
Um, but Haraj, yeah, you might want to inspect that carpet in the back. Actually,
yeah.
Haraj had a question.
Yes.
He said,
Yes.
"Does Project Save collaborate with Paul Getty Museum,
In a
since
way,
it holds one of the largest collections?"
yeah. In a way, we do because I've just assembled our new advisory board for Project Save, and one of our members is one of the archivists at the Getty Museum.
Okay,
Very cool.
Uh,
that's
yeah, yeah. So, and by the way, just to kind of give you an idea, so the new advisory board, most of whom are not Armenian, these are experts from, as I say, the Getty Museum. We have people from the Smithsonian, from Harvard University, the Boston Athenaeum, other places. And these are people who, again, they don't know that much about Armenian history or culture. But the minute they found that, when I explained to them what Project Save is, what we have, the kinds of photos, the number of photos, all the work that's gone into it, they didn't even hesitate. They are so excited to be part of it, and that proved to me, it validated my idea that just as a photographic archive,
yeah,
let's put aside for a moment that it's an Armenian heritage collection. They're just so fascinated and so interested in the photos themselves, just as photographs,
Yeah.
and as the institution itself as a photographic archive. That kind of validated for me that really, this is we have a lot of there's a lot of potential to be tapped
yeah,
in Project Save. So yeah, so one of our archivists, one of our advisors, is directly from the Getty Museum. She's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. Now this
Oh,
picture, these young men.
yeah, this is another good. This is another good photograph. So these guys are hanging out. And Ruth might know this photo. I'm pretty sure this might be a picnic, and I think it might be July 4th. This is 1918, so it's right after World War One,
Yeah,
and this is in Worcester, Massachusetts. Again, one of the older, along with Fresno, one of the older Armenian communities in the United States. And again, what's fascinating about this photo is these. Ruth might speak to this more than me, but what I love about this is, some of these guys might have fought in the war because they're of
Mhm.
that age. Because we do have a lot of photos of Armenians from around the world who are then serving in the armies of the countries they've immigrated to.
yeah,
So it could be that these guys have fought, on behalf of the United States. But you also see there that they have an Armenian flag.
hmm,
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Ruth, do you remember this photo?
I don't. I'm
It's
getting. I
okay.
know those came off the website, so I'm looking up. Oh, here they are with. I see it. Yep, I see it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the young men. Some of them are sitting on the grass and they're holding
yeah,
flags.
they have an American flag, and it says Armenian young men demonstrate their happiness for the newly formed Republic of Armenia by having the
Ah,
picnic.
there you go.
That's
Right.
cool.
oh yeah,
Right.
the
That's
There you
right.
go.
Yeah, that's
1918.
cool.
Along the American flag, they hold the tricolor.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's super
But it's
cool.
all guys, no
Yeah.
women. interestingly.
Yeah.
Well, the women were gathering on the side. You know, we tend to do that in Armenian events,
They
right?
took they took the picture.
Right.
Or they took the picture. But let me ask you a question. Is there, since these are being digitized,
Yes.
is there maybe, I don't know if you guys are working on it, to bring these into color form? Like,
No.
no?
I mean, our goal right now is so to give you an idea logistically of where we are.
Uh,
So, first of all, when we say 60,000, that's just a rough estimate that our
yeah.
archivists have put together. They feel that there's probably a lot more than that, actually.
Mhm.
Um, and when you go to our website, which, by the way, one of our first initiatives is we're completely redoing our website so that it's
Yeah.
much more interactive and
Yeah.
the functionality and all that. But um, when you go to the website and you go to our database to do a search, which I encourage people to kind of browse and use the website and do searches on there. We cross reference everything. We've really on that database is only about 2 to 3% of what we have. So that
Wow.
so there's a lot of work. We work very diligently. Our team works very hard
Yeah.
to get these photos digitized, cross-referenced, to get as much information as we can, and then to make that available so that people can make use of these photos
Yeah.
to connect the dots about Armenian culture and history, to connect the dots about their own families, to understand not just Armenian history, but again, the history of, in this case, let's say with these young men, things that have to do with Massachusetts and the period around World War One, or in other photographs to understand California history or to understand French history. So we're working as much as we can to just make these available, and then to try to make our website as user friendly as possible, so we can bring them to life.
Yeah. Well, let's go. Let's see. I think we have. Do we have? Oh, I think this was the last picture.
Was it?
Yeah, I think
Uh.
this was the last picture. Arto,
fascinating.
I wanted to ask you, and for both of you actually, Arto and
Yeah.
Ruth, moving forward, where do we see projects are going? What direction? What's coming up? What new changes are coming up? If you guys can talk about that a little bit.
Any sort of events, meetings?
So we have a lot of exciting. So as I said, the website is going to be completely overhauled. We're going to make it much more user friendly. We're going to include some audio as well, so we can bring the photos to life more.
Yeah.
The other thing we're doing is we have a series coming up called On Photography, where I'm going to be having conversations with various photographers, curators, archivists, who will be talking in general about the relevance and the importance of photography, archives, both historically, but also just in our current
Yeah.
world. Because what we really want to do is, as I say, I think for many decades, the focus has been on the Armenian element. But at this point, that's just implied. I mean, obviously it's Project Save Armenian Photograph Archive, so it's implied that we are interested in Armenian heritage. What I want to do is balance that by reminding everyone that this is a photography archive. So we are in general interested in photography as an art, as a way of documenting culture, and so to have discussions about that, and
Yeah.
that's going to be a way to broaden our scope and bring in a lot of new people to interest a lot of people across kind of different demographics. So we're really excited about that, and that's going to be, as you can see here in the flyer that you've put up. We'll have, one of the ones I'm really excited about is Nasik Armanaki, and she's from the 4+ Collective in Armenia. It's a collective of mostly female photographers who are just absolutely incredible. I loved what they were doing when I was living in Armenia. So I really want to kind of help introduce them to a kind of non-Armenian context and to the Armenian
Yeah.
world as well, outside of Armenia. They're doing work. So, and then we have people like Tatiana Cole, Elena Bulat, and others. Norar Shahinian, who's a great photographer based in Brazil. So each one of these talks will be people bringing their own perspective about the importance of photography, archives, why
Yeah.
this art form is so relevant.
Yeah, I think. Do you know Hawk?
Yes,
He's
yeah.
yeah. We're gonna have him on the show soon as well. So we
Oh,
know.
great, great,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Now, what other? I know we mentioned that there's gonna be transition, right, happening. If you can talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, it's Ruth has
We're always transitioning.
yes, yeah. Ruth has I'm very honored that she's passed the torch to me. This is it's such an amazing institution. I'm just very honored to take over for Ruth, and she gets to not only enjoy her retirement, but as you can tell, I mean, Ruth, she herself has such incredible stories that are both related to Project Save and just her own life. That
Yeah.
this as Project Save moves into a new phase of growth and of kind of reaching out to the non-Armenian world and to a lot of maybe
Yeah.
newer demographics in the Armenian world. Ruth herself, I'm working with her and pushing her to tell her story,
Yeah.
not just about Project Save, but just her
Hmm.
story as, she's an artist herself.
Yeah.
She's a kind of a cultural historian.
Yeah.
As a bicultural Armenian woman that has just done so much and experienced so much. She's a very unique person. So I think we're kind of like it's a double it's a double whammy. Project Save
Yeah.
moving into a new phase, but also I think I really hope that Ruth's story. We're going to be hearing a lot more about her own story,
Yeah.
not just about Project Save, but about her own life, which I think so many people can learn from and be inspired by.
Yeah. And I would love.
Well, I so appreciate. I gotta say, excuse me, but I have to say that I so appreciate Arto giving me instructions. Now it's your time to write the book, and you can collect photographs, but you have to write the book. And I've been saying I'll write the book when I don't have any more photographs to collect, or don't have to do the day-to-day work. Because I mean, you can't, do it all. So he has given me the orders, and I'm following his instructions, which I'm so grateful for. Thank you very much, Arto.
You have till Monday.
Deadlines.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I would love for Ruth to join us live and talk about her life in the very near future.
Yes,
and we can
please.
figure out the technical situation so she can be live with us on video. Yeah, we would love to have you on. And besides Project Save, just talk about your life because everything you've done and seen, and just like I said, being a social historian, we would love to hear your stories. So we'd be honored if you would come back on the show and talk about
Thanks,
these
I'd be
great
happy.
stories. Now, before we end the show, this is a tradition that kind of got started from one of our listeners. His name's Voskan. He's from Toronto. I think he's up there with the truckers right now. He was here, but he left. He said he couldn't hear anything because there was so much noise. But and we started this actually last year, and each one of you, I'm going to ask this question. So and let's start with Ruth. Ruth, if you had a time machine, which time period would you travel back to in Armenian history, and why?
Yeah, I thought that was a fabulous question, and I got to thinking about it, and I'm thinking, well, I never knew my Armenian grandmother. She died before I was born, but I've heard tell of her from my father's sisters, and I think I would like to live in the time when she lived, which was in the 1880s and 90s. And my grandfather came to the U.S. in 1892, and he had married his wife, my grandmother, before he left, and she was not. She had not started menstruating yet. And I've learned that the tradition is that if you get married, so she must have been about 12 years old when she got married.
Wow.
And I would love to be a fly on the wall watching what was happening to her. You did not sleep with your husband until you started menstruating.
Yeah.
You slept with, guess who? Your mother-in-law.
In the room, yeah.
Because the bride went to the home of her husband to live.
Yeah.
And then he leaves for the United States and leaves her there in a strange home. It wasn't, her own family. And I just the family dynamic just blows my mind. I would love to, live then.
Wow.
I would have been a terror. I would have.
I mean, just to let you know from that story, my own grandmother, she got married when she was, I believe, 14 or 15.
Oh,
but she wasn't.
crazy.
She didn't have her first child till she was like 18 or something. But and my grandfather was like, I believe, good 15 years older than her, and they did that. It was right after the genocide. So they, and they were promoting, as much children as possible. And she had 4. So, but yeah, wow, that's interesting. That then. Maybe one day we can some great Armenian can come up with a time machine. We are creators, so
Arto's,
it's a good time machine business. That's what we're gonna get into. Let's do GoFundMe. Arto, so the same question to you. Again, if you had a time machine, which period would you travel back to in Armenia?
So
Armenian history and time?
I had a different answer, but I changed it. I just changed it. Ruth kind of inspired me to change it. So my father's oldest brother was Gatoligos, Zade the First in Antillas. And I never knew him. And he died before I was born. And my father died, unfortunately, when I was young. So I think I'd love to be in either Aleppo or Beirut in the kind of 50s to get to know, my uncle and be around when my dad was a kid and, my dad's family. I think I would have really liked that. Yeah. And it was also kind of an interesting time in Armenian history as well.
Yeah.
In that part of the world.
The 50s, yeah. I mean, there was a lot going on in the 50s with the
in
Armenia and Aleppo and Beirut. Like there was a lot happening.
It was a revitalization of music and literature, I think.
Culture, right?
And there was
the 50s and 60s,
and there was that migration that happened in the mid 40s to the 50s from Syria back to Armenia, and a lot of the people who moved, including my family, they were educated. They had craft, they had businesses. They left everything and went over there.
Same with my mom's side too. They left in 46.
My dad's side, my mom's side, and the thing is, the stuff they went through when they went back. You can say even the prejudice towards them, the hardship. Can you imagine these people left everything to go back to their homeland, let's say, and stuff they went to. That's another podcast to talk about the trials and tribulations that they
everything
went
that they went through in the 50s and 60s.
And the story back to Ruth's, I think, and even we have the audience members commenting that a lot of the grandparents that we know of, same thing. There was a huge gap between the wife and the husband, and the wife was usually very young.
Usually around 15, 14. Crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, this was fun. A great conversation.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys for doing this, and I mean it, Ruth. We would love to have you back on and just talk about your life. So we'll talk afterwards and see what we can do. Arto, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys very
been
much.
a pleasure.
Man.
Yeah.
Thank you for the inspiration, man. Like
Likewise,
I said,
likewise.
Yeah.
I'm not,
Yeah.
Thank you.
not kidding.
Everybody go to projectsave.org. And there's so much information on there. And look at these photographs. We'll have some more stuff coming up with Project Save. Definitely, we're going to be working in the future. Anything last words you guys want to say?
No, just thank you guys. I mean, thank you guys so much for the work you do as well. And yeah, we welcome anyone to get in touch. We're on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. So we always look forward to engaging with folks. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Well, thank you for everything you're doing. Ruth, any final words you want to say before we end the show?
Well, I'm always happy to talk with people, and just know that we're out there for you, and we'd love to hear from you.
Mm-hmm.
You will.
thank you
Trust
guys.
us. You will.
Start digging, people.
Great
Start
word.
digging for some photos.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again, guys, for joining us. We'll talk to you guys soon. Appreciate it. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, it really
and Ruth,
was.
take care of yourself. We wish you guys both health and just be good and be take care of
success.
yourself and success and this Project Save. Just
Behave yourself.
yeah, behave yourself. Behave yourself.
Thank you,
Especially
guys.
you,
Okay.
Ruth. Especially you, Ruth.
Bye.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Have a great day. All right.
Thank you. You
Bye.
too.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was fun. I love
that was
speaking
cool.
with great people like them.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm telling you, it's got me really curious with maybe trying to dig on my dad's side.
Yeah, man, you
Seeing
should.
If there's any images, because my mom's side's mostly Yerevan,
Yeah,
right?
but still there's- I'm sure there's
gonna
images.
Be, yeah, she's probably got a ton of photos.
Yeah.
But
Well,
my dad's side, the way
I
they
mean,
bounced around.
I have some photos. My mom actually texted me some photos, but my uncle has some photos that I'm going to try to grab from them. And when we talk about with Umid Kut, I want to bring those pictures because they are from Antap.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
but yeah. So I think
What happened?
I don't know. I'm having some feedback, but I was gonna say, yeah, everyone who's joining us, thank you guys. I hope you
Thanks,
guys had a
Appreciate
great
it.
time. I know it was a unusual time for us, but thank you for everyone who joined us. And whoever missed it, they can go back and
it's
watch it.
It's like having breakfast with us.
Well, it's Saturday. Some people are sleeping
why
in.
not?
So, again, I want to mention we will be off this Thursday. So those of you who always message us asking, you have a live show? No, we will not have a live show
Not this
this
week.
Thursday. We will be back next Thursday, February 17th
Mm-hmm.
with Carla Garabetian, again, who's the filmmaker, director, and writer and broadcaster. It's going to be another great conversation. So besides that, any last words, Mike?
No, that was a fun adventure. I'm actually looking forward to going back home and digging in their website.
Yeah.
I need a little bit more than what we saw today.
Yeah, for sure. Again, thank you for everybody for joining us. Till the next episode, respect one another, love one another, and take care of yourselves.